Everybody here knows Nick or no? Either way, this is Nick Melillo. He's going to give you most of the tour. I'm going to assist a little bit.
I'm sure, I can't imagine you not talking for some of it.
Yeah,
How many is this first time here for some of you guys? 2, 3, anybody else? 4. All right, great. So some of this is going to be repeat for some of you guys, but for those that's the first time, this is DE-2. This is a dream come true for us here at the factory, thanks to the whole crew. This is a 64,000 square foot facility for storing, curing, sorting, and aging tobacco. Okay, so here we have the majority of Drew Estate's inventory. The rest of it is in fermentation, which we'll see in a little while. Some of you guys, we were talking last night, one of the great things about Drew Estate and our tobacco supplies, it's our strength, is the amount of different tobaccos we have. We have relationships in Jalapa where we've been growing since John came down here. Relationships that grow, these guys grow particularly for us. Most of our fermentation of filler tobaccos for Nicaragua that we grow ourselves has been done traditionally in Jalapa over the past 12 years plus. That's one of the main reasons for this facility, is actually to bring a lot of those filler tobaccos into this facility and cure them here. We get a lot more oversight, we get a lot more hands-on with the sorting and selection. So we're very excited about this process. It's going to help us really take things to the next level, being able to sort and cure in this facility. Now, traditionally, regardless of where tobacco is sorted, it's always resorted when it comes back into the factory. So first step of the process in any tobacco is revision of the tobacco at the country of origin. So we're reviewing crops here in Nicaragua from the beginning process until the ending process. That's the same way in Connecticut, same way in Mexico, same way in Brazil. So I go with, you'll meet her later, Maria Yesenia. We go to the country of origin to begin reviewing the crops, selecting, quality control is beginning there. It's then coming into this facility where it's then resorted according to our standards. So it doesn't matter how a tobacco supplier has sorted the tobacco, it's resorted again according to our standards based on what we're making. That's very important because we don't want to be using tobacco, of course, that's sorted for one thing and we're using for another. This is all about yields and use of tobacco is very important. We'll see more of that when we get to the tobacco. So we have tobacco here. As you can see over here, these are a lot of filler tobaccos from Nicaragua. So you guys can see we work with a lot of different suppliers. That was one of the great things when I first came down here. You know, John had become friends with all of these legends in the industry that have been growing tobacco for a long time. As you can see, Plasencia, ASP, these guys have been around for a long, long time. They have tremendous tobacco supplies, and we've developed these relationships over the years, and we are now getting some of the finest tobaccos.
Do you remember the first Plasencia tobaccos we ever bought?
Jonathan, there was a room in the back of the old factory that used to hold some of the storage of tobacco. I mean, at that time we were air shipping tobacco from country to country. John had gotten 5 bales of particular tobacco. I don't know if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, we had gotten, it was actually, maybe the very first was 5, but in total it was 40.
Yeah.
We got 40 bales of a Viso from Honduras. From Nestor Plasencia in 2001 or 2002. So you see a lot of, all the tobaccos that are out in this line that start over there and that go all the way through over here, except for a couple of them, all of those are Nicaraguan tobaccos, kind of to illustrate all of the different Nicaraguan tobaccos that we use here. But going to Plasencia, which you see a lot of now, Plasencia was never a big supplier of Drew Estate all the way until 2007. The year that we started dicking around blending Liga Privada, 2005, 2006. Right. So by 2005 we started really, 2006 we were heavy into the getting it right side on Liga Privada. We started with 9 early blends. But those original 9 blends that Nick and the crew put together, I would say I was a little involved as well. Just slide a little bit.
You're always involved.
Just a little, just enough to be dangerous. Interestingly, we had these 40 bales of this Nestor Plasencia tobacco that we bought in 01 or 02 or something. And we never used them because they didn't fit any of the Drew Estate blends. It was this Honduras tobacco that was very, very strong. And it was very non-typical tobacco for Honduras, first of all. So we never had a place to use it, and it aged a really long time. We had it, maybe the first 5 were in 01 or something, and we got another 35 or something in 2003 or 2002.
Yeah.
So anyway, all of the Plasencia started back then, and we did our first blends on the Liga 9 blends. Most of those had that Plasencia tobacco, that Honduran tobacco in there.
Can we talk about the other one or no?
Which one?
The other one?
Which other one? Oh yeah, you can talk. Yeah. But anyway, so the Plasencia stuff, we started to get much heavier working with Nestor Plasencia after the launch of Liga Privada, because prior to that time, we really didn't use any of his tobaccos in any of our blends. And now he's become a very big supplier for us.
ASP is also the Perez family. They grow a lot of Connecticut shade in Ecuador. They also grow here in Nicaragua some of the finest filler tobaccos in Nicaragua. They have a special hybridized seed that is basically their forte. Nobody has the type of seed that they use and grow. It's a seed, John Forte. It's a seed that they developed. It has a very unique aroma, flavor, combustion. We'll be seeing that later on also when we do some of the blending. You'll be able to see the difference between the ASP and the rest of them. Now ASP pretty much grows what they grow. They're not really interested in increasing high volumes, which they could probably do and grow and grow and grow. A lot of people are seeking this tobacco. They grow what they grow. Luckily, we were the last customer back in 06 that we were able to get into their cycle.
This tobacco here, this ASP that everybody talks about, a lot of people either lie that they use it or they get it secondhand. Like, right, you're a tobacconist who doesn't get a certain, you don't get Opus X or something. You might trade some guy your Davidoff White or something or whatever it is to get some Opus X or something. This tobacco is already sometimes is second market tobacco, just like it hard to find. And we were the last company, we were the last official company to become an ASP authorized purchaser for Nicaragua. Because what Nick is saying is that even every tour that you guys have been on, probably that's not even Drew Estate, you hear about ASP tobacco. It's like, you know, it's so fundamental if you're going to think about making a full-bodied cigar in Nicaragua, or even in, quite frankly, even in Dominican Republic. If you're going to make a really full-bodied cigar, there's probably, that's a really established company that's going to have, you know, again, I think of other companies make great tobacco as well. Aganorsa, I'm a big fan of their products. We've been one of their biggest customers from the beginning. But ASP tobacco, it's so hard not to illustrate it, even if you've heard it 10 fucking times. And I think the actual name of the company is Andy and Sylvia Perez. Right? Yeah. ASP, Andy and Sylvia Perez. I remember going to the farm my first time with Nick Perdomo. And them, you know, I think it was what's his name, Andy, who's the brother, who's kind of gone from the tobacco industry at this point. He told me to take a clump of this tobacco in my hand. And I put my hand into the soil and I pulled out like the densest, it felt like a very hard cake. It was just an incredible soil that you didn't really appreciate until, and then you think about the soil and how the soil impacts the tobacco. And now, how long have you been at Drew Estate?
Since 11 years last month.
So thinking back to days when we started, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about the difference in your scientific learnings throughout the years.
Yeah.
All of the science that's not gut stuff, but that scientific applications that you've learned.
I'm like Willie though. I got a lot of gut. work off the gut.
He's got a lot of arms.
The one interesting thing coming down here in 2003, I ran a store from 96. This is where I met Mr. Drew. 96 to 2000, 2001. I worked the store. Coming down here to Nicaragua some of the first month, it was interesting to see the amount of Nicaraguan tobacco that was shipping to other countries, like the Dominican. And then it sort of started to make sense as I began to work with the actual leaf and then tasting a lot of the Dominican blends after working with a lot of Dominican tobacco, what was happening early on. A lot of these Dominican companies have been using Nicaraguan tobacco for many years in the blending process, and that's where a lot of this strength comes from. It's not a diss by any means to Dominican tobacco. There's a lot of tobacco, you know, with strengths, but the climate in general, the sun exposure, the land, you just can't, the diversity of the Nicaraguan plant, from the bottom primings to the middle to the top, the diversity in strength is tremendous.
I never thought of?
Yeah.
You don't have the same growers there. You have more corporate stuff. When you think about the Dominican Republic, and as we're shifting from a boutique company to a larger size company or a larger player in the cigar industry, thinking about it from the corporate perspective, when you go to the Dominican Republic, you don't have ASP growing tobacco, you don't have Aganorsa growing tobacco, you don't have Padron growing tobacco, you don't have Chico Scortia growing tobacco, you don't have Oliva V, you don't have Nica Prosa growing tobacco. So, you know, I've never read it, I've never seen it, and I've never heard it said before that when people always talk about why Dominican tobacco doesn't live up to Nicaraguan tobacco, because you never hear it the other way around. You might find some people that say that what I'm saying is rude, but that's too bad. But the bottom line is that I've never heard somebody say to me, other than somebody who lives in Dominican Republic who's trying to push this shit, because we all pushing our shit, is I never heard it from them, other than them, that Dominican tobacco gives you what Nicaragua gives you. Because nothing gives you what this gives you except for Cuba. There's only two places to give this.
I would say even Cuba, not even. It's tough because we were talking about it last night. I've never seen Cuban tobacco in its raw form, which I'm dying to.
But hang on a second, going back. So I think that one of the things that would be interesting is that when you think about why the Nicaraguan tobacco is at the, that's because it's a window. Oh, there was a Windows phone.
It's a BlackBerry.
Anyway, one of the things that we've never really considered in terms of why Nicaraguan tobacco is superior is maybe has something to do with the fact of the people who I just named and the others as well who I didn't name, whoever they are, who are growing tobacco here as well. But the big players of the tobacco growers, they're not growing in Dominican Republic. And I'm sure that the tobacco. I know Leo Reyes is a great farmer.
Yeah,
he's
got.
No, I know he's good. But I'm saying, like, other than that, it's a lot of little small houses and a lot of small little people growing tobacco. And then you have a lot of the big corporate companies or the Matassa clan, which is growing typically tobaccos that seem to be lighter.
Well, you have such a growth of the machine-made market there. So a lot of these guys are looking for lighter tobaccos to be implemented in a lot of the short fill, you know, lighter blended machine-made product. I don't know if that has some effect. I mean, it's also that way in the it's been that way in Connecticut Valley. The production of backwoods has always kept, you know, backwoods. You need everybody know what backwoods is? It's a small little cheroot type cigar. They only need a really tiny piece of tobacco, broadleaf leaf. So you don't need a nice, beautiful, full leaf with no blemishes, no different. They can get a lot more yields for that. So a lot of the growers are accustomed to growing that way, which is not premium type leaf. So we've been working really hard also since, you know, 06 to work with specific farmers that are growing specifically premium grade tobacco leaves. So
I think that we're going to wind up talking Connecticut a lot when we're in the pre-industry, and I think that, you know, I think Nick is one of the best probably in the world when it comes to Connecticut tobaccos. I mean, we all have our strengths, and Nick's strengths are dynamic. They're very unusual because you cross so many borders from the tobacco side because we blend with so many different tobaccos. And Nick is always scouting for new tobaccos for us, just like Willie's working with all sorts of Dominican tobaccos now. Leo over there and Corojo stuff.
Maybe Willie has something to say about
hang on a second, because I wanted to say that before we go on to Connecticut,
yes.
all right, we're going to finish up here and talking about Nicaragua specifically. But the relationships that Nick is talking about with Plasencia, we're one of his largest customers. We buy a lot of tobacco from Nestor. ASP, we buy as much as we possibly can. If there's any extra stuff, we try and buy everything that's produced out there. Other than Plasencia, who produced it's over there? This is also Plasencia.
Yeah. So there's certain tobaccos that are not out for specific reasons.
Good. So then on top of that is Aganorsa tobaccos.
Yes.
We purchase a lot of. You guys don't know Aganorsa. There's nobody here who doesn't know Aganorsa. We purchase a lot of Aganorsa tobaccos. With the amount of Plasencia tobacco that I've been seeing coming into the factory, I see that there seems to be a lot more of a balance for us in terms of our large supply chain, where before it was a very Aganorsa intensive supply chain. It's really become more even now. And I see that as the factory grows, we're a very loyal company. We don't even have our own box factory. One of the biggest reasons for that is because when we started off in Nicaragua, Mark Bowman had always told me, make your boxes first. When he gave me $100,000, came to Nicaragua, he said, listen, make your boxes first. And I didn't do that. And I paid the price ultimately later on. But all of those guys who came to our rescue to start making 200 boxes a month and 100 boxes a month, who now make 2,000 or 5,000 a month, each of those factories, whatever, we've stayed loyal to them. But likewise with our tobacco, unless any of these guys start to hit the bottle, or they start to believe their own bullshit, once that happens and they think that you can't make something without them, every now and then, it doesn't happen often, but when that happens, you have to be able to have enough inventory to adjust to things. But we've been very loyal to all of our suppliers across the board. So I think that it's always, upon us to talk about some of the main suppliers of Drew Estate tobaccos. The Aganorsa, we blend with a lot of Aganorsa tobaccos. Willie loves Aganorsa tobacco. Nick has been using it for how many years since the beginning?
3.
So the Aganorsa tobacco, you guys know this is, you got to be very careful when you talk about Aganorsa tobacco, because a lot of guys don't even really understand that there's Esteli, Condega, Alapa, and then there's shade-grown tobaccos and there's sun-grown tobaccos. When you think historically back to the tobaccos that had the biggest impact in different periods as the industry went from Macanudo and more Macanudo, as the industry went from mild to medium, and then had this tremendous surge into this more boutique side, but into this super strong. If you guys go back far enough and you start thinking back to the days of Lito Gomez's beginnings, there was no double ligeros, there was no ligero, there was no, meaning I'm not saying he didn't use ligero, but he didn't have any of these brands. There was none of this super powerful, strong Lito Gomez stuff until the market was calling for it more. But the early time when I got into the business, the early development that you saw in the strength market was Camacho Corojo. And the Camacho Corojo of today is one thing, but the Camacho Corojo, it's still a great product, a great cigar, but the Camacho Corojo, when they first got started with the Camacho Corojo brand, I remember coming to Nicaragua and seeing their tobaccos being grown, and I may be wrong about this, but at Mangosa, and not even in this region, and they were growing Corojo wrappers here in Nicaragua. Later on, I believe they stopped growing Corojo here in Nicaragua. But it was a feat of excellence, and any of the other Corojo tobaccos that were on the market for many years were all really tobaccos from Ecuador. That's what it's a Sumatra seed tobaccos, like a VSG tobacco or a rare Corojo. These tobaccos are not Corojo seed variety. So the real next company that came that was able to offer a Corojo seed to the manufacturers really was Aganorsa. So Aganorsa was really a very big impact, because what Christian and really his father started with the Camacho Corojo, as they brought that back to Honduras, there became this huge demand that the market wanted, just like the early days of La Gloria Cubana. When you would go to Miami, you would get those cigars. And Charlie and I were talking about it yesterday. Somebody was saying they didn't live up to the hype. Trust me, indeed they did. Those cigars in today's market would survive and flourish, in my opinion, as much as they did then. But that was something that really changed the industry, those blends that he was able to produce in Miami using basically theory that was all Rolando Reyes' earlier theory, and that's got picked up by Ernesto Perez Carrillo. And you saw that move on to other manufacturers who started to understand some of these fundamental blending techniques that paid off. But the Camacho Corojo seed was a great seed of Corojo, and now the Corojo seed that's grown here. Hey Nick.
Yes, sir.
The Corojo seed that's here in Nicaragua.
Yeah.
Who has the real Corojo seed other than Aganorsa?
Well, I don't know about getting into the Aganorsa. Plasencia works with it. A lot of companies have developed hybrid seeds over the years because of resistance to sickness and whatnot. So there's a lot of Corojo.
Your seed, Corojo and Criollo hybrid?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's already in production?
Plasencia uses a lot of that.
What's the 2006?
The 2006, it's again a hybrid of Corojo seed. It's just a different variety. Yeah, Corojo. I believe Aganorsa has been working with that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just one thing that we talked about last night, just with the tobacco supplies. We talked about it to a couple guys last night. The one nice thing about having these relationships with all these different farmers, companies, growing also in Jalapa, funding farms. You know, it's kind of difficult sometimes when you grow all of your own tobacco, you have to use all of that tobacco. So, you know, sometimes you get a little bit, or you can sell it, right? But again, if you're growing and you're manufacturing, you have to use that tobacco. Is that a bad thing, good thing? You know, everything has its ups and downs. For us, we found it to have this diversity gives us a nice range of tobaccos that we can offer well blended, really, you know, different complex blends to the marketplace. So to me, you know, being a big fan of cigars personally, working the store, to me that's a big advantage in the marketplace to have, not having all your eggs in one basket.
When you think about these guys being here, like a media group, right?
Yeah.
And these guys are being dicked around with everybody, flown here, flown there.
Oh, we paid for these guys to come?
Yeah. When you
that changes everything.
When you think about these media guys, right?
Right.
And you think about they go from factory tours of great manufacturers like Pepin or Matasso or General Fuente, wherever they're going, Davidoff, right?
Yeah.
Or even smaller places, Titan de Bronze. You guys get blasted with groups now all the time coming over to there, your mom's place. When you see the media, when we have media tour guys come in like this,
yeah.
What do you think our purpose becomes in terms of not just what makes Drew Sleep different, but what do you think that these guys really get exposed to when they come to Drew? We present different ways of thinking about everything at our company, I guess. Maybe from the experiences of our lives or the stuff we've smoked. But
well, yeah, we've all really young, you know, younger generation in the industry from this end. I mean, you have a lot of old school tradition. I mean, that's of course one of the major things you brought to the table is you went from tradition to John Drew, you know, expression of art. And so we've been able to learn from all of these legends that we look up to, because I know John does too, all of these guys in the industry, we're all the biggest fans. But we've been able to learn from all of them and then adapt what works best for us here. And this is, I think, one of the best reflections, which I would imagine at a company this size, is the diversity of tobaccos. I mean, I don't know about other companies, but I would say this is probably the largest inventory of diversified tobaccos from around the world, definitely in Nicaragua, I would say. We have tobaccos here. One of the main goals is to be able to have this stock of a year, 2 years stock inventory so we can survive going through a volcanic eruption. We can evolve going through a damaged crop, through mold.
That's moved to 4 years.
Well, 2 years is the mark. Some are 4 years. Depends on the tobacco. Some other
countries, from an investment standpoint now,
yeah,
my goal will be to go from between 2 and 3 years of tobaccos that we have now to 4 years. I used to hear the story of guys chuckling, could you believe that General's got 7 years? They had a tough month, and they have 7 years of tobacco. And you're like, yeah, those motherfucking idiots. Now you think back and you're like, man, you know what? They got 7 years of tobacco. Awesome. I mean, when you see what the Padrones do, right? And we see the amount of tobaccos they're growing. They just bought another nice farm this year, right? And you say to yourself, they have 4 or 5 years of tobacco in inventory for their products, right? It's something that not only is it worth more, it's worth doing it from a strictly investment standpoint.
From investment and from maintaining of consistency and keeping the blends. That's what the problem is with, you know, in the growing of the company. It's sometimes difficult because you don't always have access to the same stuff. So you might be using the same Viso from Jalapa, but you couldn't get it from the same guy that you were getting it from, so you gotta use it from another guy. Is it the same? Well, it's about the same. So you know, you have to. It's more difficult because you're in that position. You have to compromise a little bit to even keep the cigars going. Fortunately, we've been able to, and Drew Estate has invested in this, and this is what the foundation of, you know, the whole industry.
Where I was getting at earlier, is that I think the things that these guys, you know, from a media group, I mean, you guys just must get bullshitted all day long by every fucking Tom, Dick, and Fred, just with complete bullshit. Hey.
Well, I wanted to ask these guys though, what, you know, being here.
Yeah, Mom, right now I'm at the job, you know, things going smooth. Flowers, I'm gonna have my secretary come by and pick up the kids. What kind of bullshit could he be talking about while we're fucking sitting here giving a talk? That's some shit. Don't say that.
I was gonna start singing.
Anyway, so the thing that I was getting at was this.
What are you getting at?
I'm getting at this. Is that every group that comes out, I stop and think if it's BOTL, if it's a group from Wisconsin, some cigar shop and all their customers, or a couple shops together. Not much before the group gets here, maybe a half an hour before I start the first tour, or the day before, whatever. I'll think just a little bit, Nick, about who's on the tour and what the purpose is of the tour.